Yeah, Anupa, we'll have a short discussion between each other. Okay. Yeah. So, okay.
Shall I share my screen, madam?
Sure. Yeah.
Good evening, respected madam and respected sir. For today's clinical case presentation, I am presenting the case of baby of Selena, who is a 6-month-old male baby hailing from Palakkad, who was brought with history of intermittent episodes of bluish discoloration of lips and fingers, noted since 2 months of age. As there is significant postnatal history, I would like to begin from the birth history.
What is your comment, Anupa, on this bluish discoloration of lips and fingers?
That can be it is suggestive of cyanosis, but as there is only bluish discoloration of lips and fingers, it does not point to central cyanosis as such. Can be peripheral cyanosis.
Okay. So, okay. Why do you say that it's not central cyanosis? Like,
usually in central cyanosis there will be bluish discoloration of the oral mucosa, that is the tongue, lips, and tip of nose as well.
Yeah.
Along with cyanosis of the fingertips. And,
yeah. And Anupa, you said from 2 months of age. Is there any importance of this 2 months? Bluish discoloration of lips since 2 months of age. Is there any importance for that statement?
Yes, this is not noticed at birth, or till 2 months of age, parents have not noticed this bluish discoloration. So probably it means that the cyanosis became evident from 2 months only.
So that means you are excluding a group of very critical lesions, right?
Critical cyanotic.
Yeah. If it is a cyanotic, like you said, that it is not sure whether it is a central or a peripheral cyanosis. But if it is a central cyanosis, or then you are excluding the critical states, isn't it? Okay.
Yes. Yeah. In the birth history, this baby is the third child of a non-consanguineous marriage. This baby has 2 elder siblings, 12 and 6 years old, both healthy girls. Mother's age at conception was 32 and father was 38. Mother was an overt diabetic and hypertensive on medication prior to conception. She had euthyroid status. No significant paternal illness prior to conception, and this was a spontaneous conception. Antenatal history: pregnancy was confirmed 2 weeks after missing periods. Folic acid was started after confirming pregnancy. No history of fever with rash, UTI, radiation exposure, unsupervised drug intake, or bleeding or spotting PV in the first trimester. Dating scan done was normal. Mother was started on insulin from the first trimester and was continued on Nicardia for hypertension.
Anupa, wait a minute, Anupa. Just move to the previous slide. Yeah. Anupa, you said folic acid was started after confirming pregnancy. What is the need for starting this folic acid, Anupa?
It is to prevent neural tube defects.
Yeah.
For the baby.
Okay, but how do this folic acid? We always hear, no? But how do this folic acid prevent neural tube defects?
It will help in the complete formation of the neural tract, the spinal cord, and the myelination.
Actually, this folic acid is important in the synthesis of DNA and vesicular cells, RNA synthesis, and it is involved in the, it is a cofactor in the synthesis of DNA and RNA, and also it is required for the methylation. Okay, and this, so if there is any deficiency of this folic acid, will result in what? Will result in the abnormality of this DNA and RNA synthesis and this methylation reaction, which is required for the proper closure of neural tubes. Okay, so that is. And what is the normal dose of folic acid that you give in normal pregnancy?
400 micrograms.
Micrograms. Suppose if the elder sibling there is a history of neural tube defect, what will be the dose of neural,
5 mg.
pardon?
5 mg.
Okay, 4 mg. Okay, fine. Yes, and you also mentioned there is no history of fever with rash. And what is the importance of fever with rash in this child? In this case,
It is to rule out any intrauterine infection,
yeah,
especially rubella, which can cause congenital heart disease, like PDA.
yeah. Why do you want to rule out specifically rubella?
Rubella, among the top infections, rubella can cause congenital heart disease.
What type of congenital heart disease is common with rubella?
Acyanotic.
Acyanotic, typically?
PDA.
PDA and pulmonary stenosis. Okay.
Pulmonary stenosis.
Yeah. And then you said about drug intake. What is this drug which you are so concerned about, which should not be given in pregnancy?
Drugs like anticonvulsants, then
like
phenytoin.
Yeah. What will happen if you give phenytoin? If a pregnant lady consumes phenytoin, what will happen?
There will be
fetal Hydantoin syndrome.
Fetal Hydantoin syndrome.
Yeah. And the heart disease which can occur with fetal Hydantoin syndrome includes?
TOF.
Yeah, TOF, VSD, ASD, etc. Isn't it? Any other drug other than anti-epileptic?
Retinoic acid.
Yeah, retinoic acid. What is the problem if they take retinoic acid?
It can affect the organogenesis in the.
Any specific heart disease?
It can cause.
Can cause conotruncal anomalies. Okay. Yeah. Any other things?
Then thalidomide.
Yeah, thalidomide, which can produce
Epstein's anomaly.
No. Thalidomide, which can produce Pocomel. Epstein's anomaly is characteristically caused by what type of drug? Any drug? What happens if the mother takes sodium valproate?
Sodium valproate can cause.
Okay. Any other diseases other than these drugs which you are concerned that the mother should not be having?
SLE.
SLE, yes, very good. SLE, what will happen if the mother has SLE, Anupa?
It can cause complete heart block.
Yes, complete heart block in the baby. In the baby. Yes, very good. Then diabetes, isn't it? This mother is having diabetes. Yes, okay. Hypertension, this mother is having. Then infections, any other infections which you are concerned about other than rubella, which can produce heart disease in children? Mumps? Mumps, which can produce what? Which type of heart disease? It can produce, endocardial fibroelastosis, right? Okay. Then, you should ask about 4 things. One is you should ask about drugs in pregnancy, then which you have already mentioned, anticonvulsants, then acetaminophen, then anti-epileptics, okay, then retinoic acid. Then you got to ask for the diseases in pregnancy like diabetes, hypertension, then SLE, PKU, etc. Then you got to ask about the infections like torch infections, mumps, etc. Syphilis, isn't it? Then you got to ask about the ingestants like alcohol, isn't it? No, it's not very common here, but mother consuming alcohol can produce what in the baby, especially heart disease? It can produce ASD, VSD, okay. Then cocaine abuse, etc. Okay. Yeah. So unsupervised drug intake, yes. Okay. Then.
The dating scan done was normal. Mother was started on insulin from the first trimester and was continued on Nicardia for hypertension.
Okay.
Second trimester, quickening was felt from the 5th month. She continued to be on insulin and Nicardia for diabetes and gestational hypertension, respectively. No history of any hypothyroidism. Anomaly scan done was normal. Mother took extra 300 kilocalories and 15 grams of protein. Pre-op serology and VDRL were negative, and 2 doses of TT were taken.
Anupa,
But
okay. Third trimester. Yeah.
She continued to be on insulin and Nicardia. Growth scans done were normal. 8th-month anomaly scan showed polyhydramnios. Adequate fetal movements were felt till the end of term. No antepartum hemorrhage, no uterine tenderness, foul-smelling vaginal discharge, or fever at the time of delivery.
Anupa, you mentioned about diabetes on insulin, isn't it? What is the fetal effect of maternal diabetes, Anupa? Especially when it is there in the first trimester, as well as if it is there from second or third trimester. Fetal effect of maternal diabetes.
If the mother is on uncontrolled diabetes or if she is an overt diabetic, it can cause certain congenital anomalies in the baby, such as congenital heart diseases, then neurological defects or neural tube defects, then urogenital defects, and particularly for diabetes is sacral agenesis, etc.
What happens particularly if it's taken in the first, which is more dangerous, first trimester or?
From the first trimester or an overt diabetic, they have more chance of having congenital or structural anomalies for the baby.
Okay. And suppose it happens, why is it so important, Anupa? Especially in this case, is it important?
Yes, madam. It can cause congenital heart diseases, of which cyanotic heart diseases are also common of the congenital heart diseases seen with in IDM babies.
Yeah. Anupa, you said congenital heart disease, but what type of heart disease and why does it produce, Anupa?
The common heart diseases seen in IDM babies are atrioventricular septal defects, the transposition of great arteries, tetralogy of Fallot.
Yeah. I'm sorry, Anupa, I just got disconnected. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So, Anupa, you said, why does it produce heart disease, Anupa?
It causes the fusion of the septum is affected when.
Yeah. It produces hypertrophy, isn't it? It produces hypertrophy. See, what happens is that, when there is maternal, when there is hyperglycemia, okay, maternal hyperglycemia can cause fetal, it can cause fetal hyperglycemia and fetal hyperinsulinism. Okay, and this fetal hyperinsulinism will increase, there will be an increase in the metabolic rate. Okay, and as a result of which, there will be increased oxygen consumption and there will be fetal hypoxia. And as a result of which, there will be increased erythropoietin production. Okay, and also increase catecholamine production. Okay, which will ultimately result in cardiac hypertrophy. And also, this fetal hyper insulinism will cause overgrowth of the insulin sensitive tissue. Okay, like there are certain tissues which are insulin sensitive, like heart, liver, and muscles, etc. Okay, so it can produce an increase in the fat and protein synthesis of this insulin sensitive tissue, thereby causing hypertrophy. Okay, so that is one important reason why this diabetes causes heart disease in children, heart disease, infant of diabetic mother. Okay, and this mother was on insulin right from the first trimester, isn't it? Okay, and mother took extract 300 calories in 15. What is the amount of calories that a pregnant mother should take?
300,
And
300 extra calories and 15 grams protein.
and during lactation?
500 kilocalories and 30 grams of protein.
Yeah, 525 grams of protein. Okay, and next slide, Anupa. Next slide. Yeah. Yeah. And 8-month antenatal scan showed polyhydramnios. When will you say polyhydramnios, Anupa?
When the amniotic fluid pocket, the
Is
index
more than
18, 20.
amniotic fluid amount more than 2 liters. And what does that indicate? What does that signify?
That means that it can be due to a variety of reasons.
Yes.
As this mother is a GDM mother, probably it can be attributed to the GDM.
Yeah.
Because of osmotic diuresis which occurs in diabetes.
Yeah. Otherwise,
we have to look for other reasons like tracheoesophageal fistula or neural tube defects like anencephaly or esophageal atresia,
yeah,
gastroschisis,
yes,
exomphalus major,
anencephaly,
anencephaly,
etc. Okay, very good. Okay, next slide.
Natal history is such a term emergency LSES due to fetal distress with a birth weight of 3.2 kg. Baby cried after suction stimulation and developed respiratory distress soon after birth and was shifted to NICU. No history of any cyanosis noted at birth. Baby was in NICU for 1 day, following which parents were counseled that baby has a congenital heart disease and was referred to our center on day 2 of life. On day 1, baby was on oxygen support but was not ventilated.
Yeah, Anupa, just wait, Anupa. This, according to you, Anupa, the birth weight was normal, right?
Yes.
3.2 is normal. And the baby developed respiratory distress soon after birth. What could be the cause of respiratory distress, Anupa, soon after birth?
In this case, as this is a IDM baby, and also as this is an LSES, it probably can be a transient tachypnea of newborn.
Yeah.
And also it had lasted only for 1 day, and baby was weaned off room air on day 2 of life.
Yeah. Otherwise, what suppose you are called to attend a delivery and the baby develops respiratory distress? What are the things that you would think of?
As this is a term baby, type 1 RBS is unlikely. Other causes can be meconium aspiration syndrome, as is the term baby, but there is no history of any passage of meconium intrauterine period. Other causes can be we have to think in terms of sepsis, but there is no history suggestive of any infection for the mother at the time of delivery. Other reasons can be structural anomalies like congenital diaphragmatic hernia or tracheoesophageal fistula.
So basically, you can think that if a child, if a baby develops respiratory distress soon after birth, you can just categorize as it could be a pulmonary or or extrapulmonary,
cardiac,
isn't it?
extrapulmonary.
Pulmonary. And for the ease of remembrance, you can again divide this pulmonary into parenchymal or extraparenchymal, right? Parenchymal is what you said. It could be due to, suppose it's a preterm baby, you would think in terms of a HMD, or as you said, TTN, or a type 2 respiratory distress syndrome, or a wet lung syndrome, right? TTN, as you said in this case. Or it could be something like, aspiration syndromes, meconic aspiration, or it could be a PPHN. Okay, so those are parenchymal cause. And extraparenchymal can be pneumothorax, isn't it? Pneumothorax or pleural effusion, isn't it? Or upper airway obstruction, like surgical cause, which you mentioned. Okay, then so that is pulmonary causes. And extrapulmonary causes can be, it can be heart, as you said, it could be a cyanotic CHD, isn't it? Or a congested heart failure due to any reason. Okay, or it could be metabolic problems. Metabolic problems like hypoglycemia, or okay, or it could be sepsis, as you mentioned, or it could be a CNS cause, isn't it? Okay, which may be due to hemorrhage. Okay. Okay, and Anupa, so among all these, Anupa, what are some of the surgical cause where you would just calling for a, you would think of a surgical cause of respiratory distress syndrome?
Of this pneumothorax,
Yes.
then congenital diaphragmatic hernia,
Yes.
then tracheoesophageal fistula.
Yeah.
How
will you suspect a surgical cause, Anupa?
When usually surgical cause will be unilateral, one-sided. There will be, if it is a case of congenital diaphragmatic hernia, you will see that the abdomen is scaphoid, and bowel sounds can be heard on the affected side, and decreased air and absent air entry on that particular side.
Any other surgical cause of respiratory distress developing soon after birth, Anupa? Any other surgical cause other than what you mentioned?
Congenital lobar emphysema.
Okay. Any other very important thing? Choanal atresia? Bilateral, isn't it? Bilateral choanal. Anupa, you are called for respiratory evaluating a child and you suspect choanal atresia. What is the characteristic picture of choanal atresia? The child will be having respiratory distress. Okay.
Yes, and cyanosis.
Yes. And cyanosis. Okay. Then.
And
very important.
We won't be able to pass an NG tube, feeding tube, if we try to pass.
Okay. Anything else? Anything else? Clinically, you want to differentiate. You want to make out. Two babies are there. One respiratory distress and cyanosis, one with something else, and one with choanal atresia. So this choanal atresia, any method to choanal atresia, the baby will have cyanosis, which improves on crying. Okay. So choanal atresia, the baby will have cyanosis, which improves on crying, and which improves on crying, and also, they will have pursing of the lips. Pursing of the lips. Why? Because they can't, if they keep the mouth also closed, they can't breathe. Okay. So cyanosis improves on crying and pursing of the lips. And as you said, you try to pass a Ryle's tube and you will not be able to pass. Okay. Yeah. So this respiratory distress, as you said, it could be because of a TPA, type 1, type 2 respiratory distress syndrome. Okay. Next, okay. And also, suppose you have a baby with respiratory distress, Anupa. You want to monitor the baby. What score will you use, Anupa? What is that score? What is the scoring? What is down score, Anupa? Down score. Down score is used to evaluate respiratory distress, isn't it? Okay. And what are the parameters that we use? We use respiratory rate,
respiratory rate,
retraction,
retraction,
air entry,
saturation,
cyanosis, and grunting.
cyanosis and grunting.
Grunting, isn't it? Because you are monitoring the baby and you want to know whether the baby is becoming sick or not, isn't it? So you use this down score, and if it is less than 4, that means it is now there is no evidence of no respiratory distress. 4 to 7 means there is respiratory distress, right? And more than 7 means there is impending respiratory failure. Right? So because child with respiratory distress in front of you and you want to monitor, right? So these are the down score. Okay, yeah. Then next.
No history of any neonatal jaundice or seizures noted for the baby. Baby was weaned off the room air on day 2 and transported here. From day 2 of life, baby was accepting direct breast feed and was moving all 4 limbs with good cry. At our center, echo was done and parents were counseled that baby has a congenital heart disease and requires regular follow-up.
Anupa, just 1 minute, Anupa. Anupa, you said no history of neonatal jaundice. Anupa, when will you be very, very like, you may see so many babies with neonatal jaundice, but when will you think that it is significant?
When jaundice, which is seen on day 1 of life, is
Yes.
pathological.
Yeah, yeah.
And if the baby, if the mother is an Rh negative mother, or if there is an ABO incompatibility, also we have to be vigilant, as there could be chance of hemolysis and chance of jaundice.
And what is the rate of increase of bilirubin? Where you
More than 3 grams.
Is it more than 3 grams? Okay, more than 0.2 milligram per
0.2
deciliter.
milligram per deciliter
Per hour.
Correct.
Yeah, more than 0.2 milligram per deciliter per hour, you will think that it is significant hyperbilirubinemia, isn't it? And Anupa, you said about seizures, isn't it? Anupa, do you see like generalized tonic-clonic seizure? Or yeah. So what are the different patterns of seizure that you see in the newborn period? What are the different patterns of seizure?
Usually, if their myelination is not complete, we have subtle seizures, such as lip smacking movement, vacant stare, or cyclical movement, or they have focal clonic, tonic-clonic type of seizures, and in flexor spasms.
Yeah. So basically, there are 4 or 5 different types of patterns of seizure. Okay. So one is, as you said, there can be focal clonic seizure. Focal clonic seizure, in which there is clonic movements of the upper limb or lower limb or face, isn't it? Another one is there is focal tonic seizure. Focal tonic seizure, where there is sustained posturing of a limb. Okay, focal tonic seizure. Another one is, there is myoclonic seizure. Myoclonic seizure, when there will be generalized myoclonus, which is more in the upper limb. Okay, and yet another seizure is autonomic seizure. Okay, now what is autonomic seizure? Where the seizure presents like with apnea with tachycardia. Yeah, apnea with tachycardia, and also with apnea with tachycardia with pupillary dilatation. Apnea with tachycardia with pupillary dilatation. Okay, then others maybe, as you said, in term babies, it can present with cycling movements, sucking movements, and chewing movements. And preterm babies, any other method, any unexplained tachypnea, tachycardia also can be a feature of yeah. Okay. And what are the seizure mimics, Anupa, in the newborn period? Seizure mimics. These are the various patterns, isn't it? Focal tonic, focal clonic, autonomic seizure, myoclonic seizure. Okay. What are the seizure mimics in the newborn period? Are all movements seizure? Yes.
Apnea.
Yes, apnea.
Then breath holding spell.
Breath holding, newborn period? Do you get breath holding?
Then hypocalcemia.
Suppose a baby moves the limbs in the sleep. During sleep, you say?
Sleep myoclonus.
It is called benign neonatal sleep myoclonus, isn't it? So how will you know that it is a sleep myoclonus or a seizure? Sleep, yeah, it is absent during the when the child wakes up.
Wakes
Yeah,
up.
it is totally absent. Now, yet another movement is there, during exam, what happens to Anupa? To you and me, we become so jittery, isn't it? We become so jittery. Yeah, so how will you differentiate the jitteriness from seizure, Anupa?
When you try to hold, the jitterness will stop, but seizure, even if we try to contain it, it will continue to uh, go on,
Yeah.
and and there will be active flexion extension component in the seizure.
Jitteriness, what happens? Yes, what you said only. Jitteriness, what happens is that it will decrease with the flexion of the extremity, isn't it? And when you flex the extremity, it will decrease, and also with applying gentle restraint itself, it will stop. Okay, and also it is number one, and it is not associated with abnormal eye movements. Not associated with abnormal eye movements. Number three, there is no autonomic change. Okay, so it will disappear with this gentle restraint. It is not associated with any abnormal eye movements, and it will disappear with there is no autonomic change also. Okay, yeah. Okay, next.
At home, baby was active, moving all four limbs. On a subsequent vaccination visits, baby had adequate weight gain, and baby attained all age-appropriate milestones. By 1.5 months of age, parents started noticing bluish discoloration of lips and fingertips, which was noted more after crying and when the baby was hungry, which subsided by itself after baby was pacified. Such events used to occur at a frequency of 3 to 4 times per day, and at 2 months of age, in view of the recurrent events, baby was started on 2 medications for the same. At 3 months of age, a surgery was done for the baby.
Okay. Anupa, now, okay, you said, Anupa, now can you can you comment on the cyanosis, on the bluish discoloration?
Now also, now the mother has noticed central cyanosis here. There is a bluish discoloration of lips as well along with the fingertips, which is noticed after crying and when hungry. But these events are not associated with the progressive worsening of the cyanosis or loss of consciousness or seizures. Which required the baby to be taken to the emergency room on an such events have not occurred.
Okay. Anupa, what are you trying to say by all your statements?
There is no any cyanotic spell for the baby.
Yeah. Okay. Now, Anupa, suppose I'm not convinced that it is a central cyanosis, but I know you are telling it is central cyanosis. Now, how can I know whether it is a central cyanosis or a peripheral cyanosis?
By hyperoxia test.
Very good, Anupa. Now, how will you do an hyperoxia test? And how is your inference? Yeah.
We have to take a arterial blood gas.
Yes.
Initially.
Yes.
First, we have to take one arterial blood gas, and then we have to give the baby 100% oxygen with 100% FiO2.
Yes.
And after giving it for some time, we repeat the ABG. If it shows of the partial pressure of oxygen, the partial pressure of oxygen less than 70 after giving oxygen also, it is indicative of a cyanotic heart disease.
Yeah.
Or if it is improving with the oxygen and the PaO2 is more than 100, it means it is a pulmonary cough.
Okay. Yeah. So you give 100% oxygen by oxygen food, and sometime it is usually given for 10 minutes, isn't it? 10 minutes, and then you check, and various books says different values. Some say more than 150 torr, some say more than 100, isn't it? If it is of pulmonary origin, and if it is less than 50 or less than 100, you say it is of cardiac arrhythmia. But if still you're not convinced, any other method to
we have to check the saturation in the upper and when the baby completes 36 to 48 hours of age, we have to measure the saturation of the right upper limb and any of the lower limbs. If any of the saturation is less than 90%, it requires urgent evaluation, or the difference between the two limbs is more than 4%, also a cardiac evaluation has to be done for the baby.
That is SpO2, right? Saturation, right? Okay. So yeah, so pre-ductal and post-ductal PO2 measurement you can do, isn't it? So right upper limb, and then you do for a lower limb. And if the PO2 value in the preductal artery, example the right upper limb, and that of the lower limb is if there is a difference of 10 to 15 millimeters of mercury, if it is higher, saturation as you said 4% or PO2 of 10 to 15 millimeters of mercury, then you say that there is a right to left shunt or there is a central cyanosis, isn't it? Okay. So this child has got a central cyanosis. Okay, Anupa, now if you want to, so this is if you measure, you do a hyperoxia test and all these things. But if you want to clinically differentiate between pulmonary cause and a respiratory cause, respiratory and a cardiac cause, how will you clinically differentiate?
Usually, if it is a pulmonary cause, it will be along with the tachypnea, there will be other signs of respiratory distress as well, like grunting, subcostal retraction. But usually in a cardiac cyanosis, there will be only tachypnea along with the cyanosis.
It is a quiet tachypnea in case of cardiac, isn't it? Whereas in case of respiratory, it's associated with retraction, cyanosis, grunting, and CNS cause also can cause cyanosis, where the child will have a shallow breathing and poor muscle tone. But that also will respond to oxygen. Okay. And then you mentioned that the baby was started on 2 medications. What could be the 2 medications, Anupa?
It could be, one can be beta blocker to prevent cyanotic spells for the baby. And the other can be oral iron.
And we'll come to it later. But what could be a reason why you want to give iron? How is iron going to help?
There will be increased preposition, so there will be increased oxygen carrying capacity.
Yes. Any other reason? Any other reason why you want to give iron? One is it increases the oxygen carrying capacity. Another one is, iron deficiency anemia. The microcytes of the iron deficiency, microcytic RBCs, they can cause sludging. Okay, they are not easily deformable, and it can cause sludging and thereby increasing the CNS complication. Okay. Yeah, and at 3 months of age, the surgery was done. What it could be?
It could have been as the baby is having intermittent episodes of cyanosis. It means that there is a developing pulmonary or the infundibular stenosis for the baby. So it could have been either a balloon valvotomy of the pulmonary valve, stenting of the pulmonary valve, which could have been done, or it could have been any palliative shunts like BP shunts.
Okay, we'll come to it later, but it could have been some surgery. Okay, then next. We'll come to it later. Yes, then.
No history of any events with worsening of bluish discoloration, respiratory distress, loss of consciousness or seizure. No history of any suck-suck cycle, forehead sweating or inadequate weight gain noted for the baby.
Yeah, Anupa, can you, so do you expect a blue child to have, what is the reason for this suck cycle?
Usually in a case of cyanotic heart disease with cyanosis at this stage, cardiac failure, this suck cycle indicates exertional dyspnea, which is a sign of cardiac failure.
Yes.
But in this case, we are not actually expecting cardiac failure. But certain cyanotic heart disease, especially critical cyanotic heart diseases, can present with cardiac failure, such as TGA TAPVC.
Yeah. So what are the features of cardiac failure that you will see?
We have to ask the mother for suppressive cycle or exertional dyspnea, then whether recurrent respiratory tract infections and inadequate weight
What are the
gain.
typical features of left heart failure? Typical features of right heart failure? 1, 2, 3, 4.
Typical features of left heart failure is left heart failure. There will be
Tachypnea,
tachypnea,
tachycardia, cough, wheezing, wheezing,
and
dyspnea and bilateral chest raise will be there, isn't it?
Raise.
And that of right heart failure?
There will be tender hepatomegaly, raised JVP.
Tender hepatomegaly, raised JVP, edema, isn't it? Edema. And Anupa, can you just, because this baby is just born, and then what is the cause? What are the conditions? Just tell me 1 or 2 conditions which can produce cardiac failure during the first 1 week. Because you said there is no sucrose cycle, so
PGA.
PGA, which can produce, PGA produces cardiac failure in the first week. Duct dependent systemic circulation, right? Okay. Yeah. Duct dependent systemic circulation includes
Coarctation of aorta.
Yeah. Severe aortic stenosis, then coarctation of severe coarctation, interrupted aortic arch, obstructed TAPVC, that is okay, obstructed TAPVC, etc. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Then no history of seizure or okay.
Following the surgery, such episodes are occurring less frequently and reduced to 1 to 2 times per month. And he is planned for definitive surgery once he attains adequate weight, and hence currently is admitted at our center for definitive repair of the same.
Okay, fine. Yeah. We'll come to it later. Yeah.
Development history, baby has attained all age-appropriate milestones. Gross motor-wise, he is able to sit with support. Fine motor-wise, transfer of objects is present. Social-wise, he smiles at mirror image. And language-wise, monosyllables are present.
This is development history, right? You have taken a developmental assessment also, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, then. So the development dietary history?
Dietary history is an exclusively breastfed baby. As per the history, the feeds appear to be adequate for the baby. He is taking feeds 6 to 8 times per day, passing urine 6 to 8 times, and passes stools 2 to 3 times per day.
For exam, you have to calculate the calories also. Okay. Okay. Then, what is the one quick question? What is the caloric value of 100 ml of breast milk and protein? Quick.
Yeah, 67 kilocalories
and protein
and 1.1 gram.
And what is the weight to casein ratio in breast milk? And what? Yeah, which is more? Whey is more in breast milk or cow's milk? Whey protein.
Milk.
Oh no. Whey protein is more in breast milk. Okay. Whey is more in breast milk. Okay. Whey to casein ratio 60:40 or some says 80:20. Okay. And casein content is more in cow's milk. That's why we make curd out of cow's milk. Okay. Fine. Next. Dietetic history. Then.
Immunization history at birth: BCG, OPV, and hepatitis B taken. 6 weeks, Penderac 1, OPV 1, IPV 1, and Rotab.
So all these vaccines were taken. Suppose, Anupa, suppose a 4-year-old child comes to you who comes from a very poor background and asking for, he had missed the routine immunization. Okay, how will you advise vaccination? A 4-year-old child is coming, who has not taken all this vaccine, and she's coming to you for taking vaccine.
4-year-old, we can give DPT.
Yeah.
Then OPV.
Yeah.
Then hepatitis B.
In the first visit, what all will you give? You will give BCG, OPV, DPT and hepatitis B, isn't it? First visit. Then after 1 month, you will give OPV.
After 1 month, OPV and
OPV, DPT,
DPT
hepatitis B.
and hepatitis B.
Hepatitis B. Then after 2 months, you will give
DPT.
no. You will give OPV, MMR, and typhoid. OPV, MMR, and typhoid. And after the 6th month, you will give DPT and hepatitis B, isn't it? For those who have missed the routine immunization schedule. Okay, next.
Family history, no family history of cardiac diseases in any of
Why
these.
do you want to know that, Anupa? No family history of cardiac disease. Is there a, is it a risk factor? Yeah. Suppose the father has got or the mother has got heart disease, what is the chance that the child will have heart disease? Yeah, if the elder sibling is, if the sibling, if any of the siblings are affected, there is the chance that the next child will be affected is 2 to 3%. Okay, and if the mother is affected, the chance that the child gets affected is 15%. And if the father is affected, the chance is 4%. Okay. Yeah, so that is why we want to know whether there is family history of cardiac disease. Okay, and there are certain heart disease which runs in families. Okay, next.
Socioeconomic status, we belong to a lower middle class family.
Okay.
On examination, baby was alert, active. There was no obvious facial dysmorphism.
Yeah.
Vitals, temperature was 98.6 degree Fahrenheit. Heart rate was 110 per minute. Respiratory rate was 30 per minute. The forelimb BP monitoring was within normal range. Saturation was 89% in the right upper limb and 88% in the left lower limb.
Anupa, why do you want to take this 4-extremity BP?
To look for any, if there is coarctation of aorta.
Yeah. So what is the relation between upper limb and lower limb BP in normal children? The lower limb BP will be at least 5 to 10 centimeter, isn't it? 5 to 10 centimeter mercury more, 5 to 10 centimeter more than the upper limb, isn't it? But if there is upper limb hypertension, that indicates OA. Okay, next. And what about the saturation in the lower limb? What is the, why do you want to take this saturation? What made, it's very good that you measured the saturation BP in all the limbs. And suppose you want to take the BP of the thigh, where will you keep the step? The diaphragm of the step?
Sorry, madam, BPSC.
If you take the lower limb BP, where will you keep the step?
If it is in the thigh, we have to keep in the popliteal.
Very good, yeah. And why do you want to take the saturation, upper limb, lower limb?
For preductal and postductal saturation.
Okay. So differential saturation, if it is more than 4%, that means the child has got a right to left shunt, isn't it? And Anupa, that is differential saturation. What is reverse differential saturation? Reverse differential saturation. Differential saturation is what we said, right upper limb and lower limb. What do you mean by reverse differential saturation?
When there is differential cyanosis.
That is differential saturation. That is the upper limb will be pink and the lower limb will be blue. But reverse differential saturation is the upper limb will be blue and the lower limb will be pink.
In subclavian steel.
TGA with CoA.
Yeah.
In TGA with CoA, you get differential, or in TGA with PPHN, you get a reverse differential oxygen saturation. Okay, next.
This picture, the photo just showing the baby. There was no obvious facial dysmorphism for the baby, and no evident central cyanosis.
Yeah. Okay.
There is no pallor, express cyanosis, clubbing, lymphadenopathy, or edema. Head to foot examination, shape of head was normal. AF was open 1 into 1 centimeter. Hair was normal. Ears were not losed. Eyes, no hypertelorism or cataract. Nose was normal. No high arched palate. Neck was normal.
Anupa, wait, just a minute. Anupa. Next slide, yeah. No pallor, express cyanosis, clubbing. Okay. Anupa, when will you get clubbing? Suppose there is a cyanotic CHD. When will you get clubbing in such cases? How long will it take for a clubbing to develop in CCHD?
About 1 year.
3 to 6 months.
3
Okay. Yeah, it takes at least 3 to 6 months for clubbing to develop. And will you get clubbing in acyanotic heart disease?
No.
You can get, suppose if I say, yes, I will get clubbing in acyanotic heart disease, in which particular condition? When it is associated with infective endocarditis. Okay. ACHD with infective endocarditis, you can get clubbing. And Anupa, within 1 second, will you tell me what is the first grade of clubbing? Grade 1?
Grade 1, fluctuation of angle.
Yeah. Grade 2 is?
Grade 2 is
obliteration. And what is that angle called? What is that angle called?
Shamrock's window.
No. What is that angle called? Yeah, okay, it's called Louis Bond's angle. And Anupa, which is the first finger for the clubbing to be affected? First finger.
Forefinger.
It is a thumb first, followed by forefinger. Okay, thumb first, followed by forefinger. Okay, yeah, and then no lymphadenopathy or edema, hair, ears. Okay, yes, then. And cataract, eyes. You said there is no cataract. Can you get heart disease and cataract?
Is in intrauterine infection.
Yes.
Like
intrauterine infections, then you can get in homocystinuria, Down syndrome, isn't it? Myotonic dystrophy, all these conditions you can get heart disease and cataract, isn't it? So it's an important thing that you mentioned. Okay, next.
This is focusing. There is no evidence cyanosis or clubbing for the baby.
Good. Yeah.
Chest wall and abdomen, there were no deformities. No long pointed fingers. Palmar pieces are normal. Lower limbs appeared normal. Spine, no kyphoscoliosis. No tuft hair or sacral dimple. No neurocutaneous markers. No asymmetric crine species. Accessory nipple and pectoralis major was present bilaterally.
So you want to roll out all the syndromes which are accessible, and Poland syndrome and all the other syndromes. And chest wall and abdomen, no deformities. What do you mean by that, Anupa? What do you try to say?
No pectus carinatum, which can usually or precordial bulge, which can occur with the hyperkinetic precordium, or when there is pectus excavatum, which can come with micronutrient deficiencies.
Yeah. Like, and how can you grade this pectus excavatum, Anupa? It can be saucer, cup, and funnel. Okay. It can be saucer shaped, it can be cup shaped, or it can be funnel shaped. And when will you say that the heart will be affected when the anteroposterior diameter in pectus excavatum is? If it is less than 16 centimeter, 16 centimeter, we'll say that there will be shifting of the heart. Okay. And if it is less than 11, that means the heart will be compressed. Okay. So pectus, excavatum, and carinatum. Okay. Next.
Anthropometry wise, weight was 7.1 kg against an expected of 7.4 kg. 95%. There was no failure. Length was 64% against an expected of 65 centimeter. 98%. No standing. Head circumference was 43 centimeter against an expected of 43. According to Dine's formula was 41.5.
Dine's formula. What is the formula for Dine's? Dine's formula is?
Length by 2 plus 9.5 gave the value 41.5 plus or minus 2.5.
Yes, okay, fine. Yeah, good.
Developmental assessment, pull to sit, there is no head lag. Vertical suspension, there is no scissoring. Truncal suspension, baby is able to maintain head above the plane of body, and baby is able to sit with support. Transfer of objects is present, and he can say monosyllable.
Anupa, can you pull to sit? No head lag, Anupa. Can you just say the CDC grading of head control?
By 3 months,
No. CDC grading of head control. Grade 1 to 5. CDC grading of head control is grade 1 means the head is steady, but it is only momentarily, right? And grade 2 means on the dorsal suspension, the head just, as you just pull the baby, the head also comes up. And in prone suspension, okay, the child will, will bear weight on the forearm, on the arms. Will lift the head on the arms. Okay, and grade 4 will be the child, when the mother keeps the baby on the shoulder, the child will have steady head. The head will be steady, and the child will move around. Even if the mother moves around, the child's head will be steady. Okay, and grade 5 will be full head control. Okay, yeah. So this child has got grade 5. Okay, then able to sit with support. CDC grading of sitting with support. Sitting. Grade 1 is that the child is able to sit only momentarily. Okay. Grade 2 means the baby is able to sit, only for 10 seconds or 30 seconds. Okay. And then with support, like leaning forwards. Grade 3 means the baby will sit with straight back. Okay. Grade 4 means the baby will sit and turn back, like pivoting. Okay. And grade 5 means the baby can, in the sitting position, the baby can stand up. Okay. Without support. Okay. So that is CDC grading of head control, sitting, and there is standing also. Okay. So you can read that. Okay. Next. Transfer of object, monocerebral. Yeah. Examination of CVS. Yeah.
Yes. Inspection. Shape of chest is normal. No epigastric or suprasternal pulsations. Apical impulse is not visible. Shape of precordium is normal. No precordial bulge. No other visible pulsations. No dilated veins or scar marks.
Anupa, can you quickly tell me how will you define apex, Anupa? 1 second.
Apex in a newborn baby is in the fourth intercostal space, 1 centimeter medial to the midclavicular line.
Yeah.
By 6 months, it reaches the fourth intercostal space at the midclavicular line. By 1 year, it reaches in the it reaches the fifth intercostal space.
And a typical normal apex.
A typical normal apex is it is there.
How will you describe a typical normal apex? Typical normal apex is seen in 1 interspace, isn't it? Yeah. Seen in 1 interspace, and it does not, the outward movements does not persist beyond early systole. Okay, early systole, and not only that, the palpable area will be 2 to 2.5 centimeter. Okay, and what about hyperdynamic apex? Hyperdynamic apex.
It means there is a fluid overload, volume overload.
Yeah. And there it is felt in more than 1 interface. Okay. It is felt in more than 1 intercostal space, and also it lasts more than 50% of the systole. Okay. Okay. Then you mentioned shape of the precordium normal, no precordial bulge. Anupa, can you define precordium in 1 minute? 1 second. Precordium. Yeah. Precordium is the area of the chest overlying the heart. Okay. Okay, and this precordial bulge, do you get precordial bulge normally, Anupa? No. Okay.
Only when there is.
Can you become a little more louder, Anupa? Okay, carry on, yeah. Okay.
Madam,
Kekam. Okay.
Usually, if there is any ventricular hypertrophy, or when there is a hyperdynamic, continued hyperdynamic precordium, then there will be bulging of the precordium.
Yeah. So it can be, it's not only in cardiac cases, isn't it? It can be cardiac cases, as you said, when there is ventricular hypertrophy. But in non-cardiac cases also you get a precordial bulge, as in case of what? Rickety chest. Yeah, rickety chest with and also in kyphus scoliosis you can get a precordial bulge. And how will you grade precordial bulge, Anupa? Precordial bulge again can be graded as grade 1, 2, 3. Grade 1, it can be seen only by careful examination. Only if you carefully observe only you can see a precordial bulge. And grade 2 means it can be easily made out. And grade 3 means it is very prominent. Okay. So grade 1 and 2 and 3. Okay. Next. Second.
Auscultation.
No. You have completed palpation?
Percussion. Borders of heart percussed out normally. Left border of heart corresponds to the apex and right border
No,
corresponds.
Anupa, just previous slide. Yeah. Apex palpable and then left parasternal heave is absent. What do you mean by left parasternal heave, Anupa?
When there is right ventricular hypertrophy,
Yeah.
there is left parasternal heave.
Yeah. And how will you grade left parasternal heave? Where will you get left parasternal heave?
In conditions causing right ventricular hypertrophy.
Okay.
When we have to keep a pen or
Yeah.
a pen over the sternal
Yeah.
border and see if there is a rise of the pen. Right.
And yeah. Okay. And how will you grade left parasternal heave? Again, grade 1, 2, 3. Grade 1 is it is seen. It can be just seen as a. It can be just visible, isn't it? Just visible, and there will be an instant lift of this thing, and it's just visible. Grade 2 means it is visible and palpable, but it can be obliterated. Okay, if you apply pressure, it can be obliterated. But grade 3 means it is visible, it is palpable, but cannot be obliterated. And definitely it indicates a right ventricular hypertrophy. Okay, so that is left parasternal heave. Okay, then percussion.
Auscultation. Next one is
Percussion.
Percussion. Borders of the heart percussed out normally. Left border corresponds to the apex and right border corresponds to the right sternal border. There is
Anupa, can you just tell me, just 1 minute, Anupa, how will you percuss the right border of the heart? What is the first thing that you will do in percussing the right border of the heart?
we have to percuss from the left side of the heart towards the.
No. First thing.
First, we have to percuss the apex. For that,
No. Right heart border. First, you have to percuss the right heart border. Come down. Right heart border, you percuss it by. First, you percuss the liver border, isn't it? First, you percuss the liver border, and then you keep your hand parallel to, and then you come to the right heart border, isn't it? And when will you say that the right heart border is formed by the right atrium, isn't it? And when will you say that there is right atrial enlargement? By percussing out when the
there is a dull note beyond the right sternal border.
How much beyond?
1 to 2 centimeters.
Yeah, very good. Yeah. If there is a dull note which extends beyond 1 centimeter beyond the right sternal border, you will say that the child has got a right atrial enlargement. Okay, and which is very classical of. Okay, then right atrial enlargement, Epstein or okay. Next, auscultation.
Auscultation. S1 is heard normally in all areas. S2 is soft and single, no split appreciated. And ejection systolic murmur of grade 3/5 is heard best in the pulmonary area, which is harsh in quality. No ejection blip, no continuous murmurs heard at the back. There are no diastolic murmurs.
Anupa, you said that S2 is soft and single, and there is no split up. What could be the reason for the soft S2 and single S2?
Can be probably because of the infundibular stenosis, which is causing delayed P2, or in case of a severe pulmonary stenosis, it it may not be heard at all.
Yeah. So what happens is that the right ventricular outflow tract obstruction, it causes a delay in the P2, and also the pulmonary artery pressure is also less. So it causes a delayed and also a reduced intensity of P2, so this delayed P2 and the reduced intensity together makes it inaudible, isn't it? Inaudible, P2 becomes inaudible. So S2 appears as single. And the second heart sound that we hear is the aortic sound, isn't it? And it is louder because the aorta is anteriorly displaced, isn't it? And the ejection systolic murmur is due to
the flow of blood through a stenotic valve.
Stenotic valve. And what about there is okay. Why do you say continuous murmur, Anupa? No continuous murmur.
Usually, if it is a cyanotic heart disease, there can be collateral circulation, which is a compensatory mechanism by the body. So to look for that, we have to auscultate for any collateral murmurs.
Yeah. So if you say it, that means if there is continuous murmur, that indicates collaterals, isn't it? And that indicates a critical pulmonary stenosis or a pulmonary atresia with bronchial collaterals. So if you hear a continuous murmur in a blue baby, that means it indicates tetralogy of Fallot with dilated bronchioles, or it indicates pulmonary atresia with bronchial collaterals. Okay. Yes. Then no diastolic murmur. Yes, there is no diastolic event. Okay, then.
Other examination, respiratory system, it was normal vesicular breath sounds and air entry was bilaterally equal. There was no crackles or bronchi. Per abdomen wise, it was soft, non-tender. There was no organomegaly and bowel sounds were present. CNS wise, baby was fully conscious, alert. Cranial nerve examination appeared to be normal. Fundus examination was normal. Motor system, bulk, there was no wasting. A baby had normal tone and normal power in all limbs. Dependent reflexes were present, and plantar was flexor bilaterally.
And for exam, I think you should also mention about with all the sites of murmurs, you should mention about the different areas. Okay, you just mentioned only about the pulmonary ejection systolic murmur. Okay, you mentioned different areas, and also you should mention the different murmurs, and also you should mention the murmur in whether there is radiation of murmur. Okay, and another thing that definitely you should mention, not in this case obviously, but in older children, one thing you should mention is dynamic auscultation, isn't it? What is dynamic auscultation?
Inspiration.
No, it different. Dynamic auscultation means that means the change in murmur in relation to, one is posture, then respiratory movements, and then exercise, isn't it? Posture means there are certain murmurs which increases in the upright posture, isn't it? And which disappears in squatting. Okay, so the murmur which increases in the upright posture includes Hocum and hypertrophic obstetric cardiomyopathy and MVP, isn't it? The murmur which increases in standing posture, the upright posture is Hocum and hypertrophic obstetric cardiomyopathy and MVP murmur. And the murmur which softens on, that means which is louder on squatting is, the murmur which is increased on squatting is AR murmur. Isn't it? And the murmur which louder on upright is Hocum and MVP, which is softer on upright posture is AS murmur. Okay, and okay, so one is regards to posture, second one is regards to respiration. Okay, as you said, all the right side murmur
increase of inspiration except ejection clip of a pulmonary.
Yeah. What is that sign called?
De
Carvalho sign, isn't it? Okay. Then there is Valsalva maneuver. You can do Valsalva maneuver, and it decreases. All right side and left side murmur will be decreased with Valsalva maneuver. And exercise. Exercise will definitely soften the Hockham murmur will be softened. Okay. So dynamic auscultation is very important, and all the particular signs, and you have to describe the murmur as such. Okay. Yes. So other systems are normal. Okay. There is no organomegaly. Okay. Next.
Diagnosis is the cyanotic congenital heart disease with decreased pulmonary blood flow, probably of the BST-PS physiology, and the baby has sinus rhythm, no congestive cardiac failure with the normal growth parameters. The different.
Okay. Anupa, yes, next also, next you have mentioned the differential diagnosis. Okay. Tetralogy of Fallot, DR with
Tetralogy of Fallot, double outlet right ventricle with the VST with the PS, or single ventricle with the PS.
Yeah. Okay. Anupa, just the previous slide. Yeah. Anup, now we'll just come to the case proper. You said cyanotic congenital heart disease with decreased pulmonary blood flow, probably VSD with PS physiology. Anupa, as we approach, suppose this child is coming to us, this mother is bringing this child to you. How will you at all know whether the child has got a heart disease?
One is
Heart disease. Yeah.
One we have to look on examination of the cardiovascular system. We detect the murmur, or on general examination there is cyanosis for the baby.
Okay. Yes, cyanosis. What is that criteria called?
Sorry, madam.
What is that criteria called by which we say that this NADA's criteria? Yeah, NADA's criteria includes
major
and minor. Major criteria means systolic murmur more than grade 3, diastolic murmur, cyanosis and
cardiac failure.
And minor criteria includes
systolic murmur less than grade 3,
yes.
Abnormal heart sounds, abnormal ECG, chest X-ray,
and the presence of one major or two minor indicates that the child has got a heart disease. Yes. Okay. So that is when the child has got a heart disease. Now you have mentioned congenital. Why do you say congenital heart disease? How can you say that a particular child has got a congenital heart disease?
Because in this case, the baby and
any child presenting before the age of 1 year, isn't it? You can say that the child has got a congenital heart disease, number 1. Number 2, the child will have, one is before the age of 1 year, that is as in this case. Another one is the child has got, if a child has got extracardiac manifestations, isn't it? Or a syndromic child, suppose a Down syndrome child has got a heart disease, unless proved otherwise, you will not say rheumatic heart disease, rather you will say a congenital heart disease. So a syndromic child, then presenting before 1 year, then extracardiac manifestation, you will say it is a congenital heart disease. So first thing is whether the child has got a heart disease. Second is if the child has got a heart disease, whether it is congenital or acquired. Now acquired heart disease, what will be the typical history like? The child will have a
dyspnea on
dyspnea and joint pain, isn't it? Joint pain, arthritis, fever, it will all point to a rheumatic heart disease. Then if it is a congenital heart disease, now coming to whether it is a cyanotic or an acyanotic heart disease, right? Isn't it? Now what are the factors by which you say it is acyanotic or cyanotic?
If it would have been an acyanotic heart disease,
yeah.
The baby would probably would have started having symptoms of exertional dyspnea, failure to thrive, and recurrent respiratory tract infections.
Yeah.
And which point to acyanotic heart disease.
Yeah, cyanotic heart disease will have definitely cyanosis, or there will be evidence of clubbing, isn't it? So, if the child, so first thing that you should know is whether the child has got a heart disease. If the child has got a heart disease, whether it is congenital or acquired, and if it is congenital heart disease, whether it is a cyanotic heart disease or an acyanotic. Now, if it is an acyanotic heart disease, what particularly is the heart disease? Now, acyanotic heart disease can either be a it can be a shunt lesions, isn't it? Left to right shunt lesion, or it could be an obstructive lesion, or it could be a regurgitant lesions, right? Isn't it? or again this shunt itself can be a pre-tricuspid shunt, or it could be a post-tricuspid. Pre-tricuspid shunt means at the atrial level. That includes characteristically
ASD.
ASD, and post-tricuspid BSD PD, isn't it?
Yes,
Okay, PD. Okay. And cyanotic heart disease means it could be either a cyanotic heart disease with increased blood flow or decreased blood flow, isn't it? Okay. And then, so that is the fourth one. So whether heart disease, whether congenital or acquired, then whether cyanotic or acyanotic. Now, if it is a cyanotic, what is the type of lesion? If it is acyanotic, what is the type of lesion? Now, if it is a cyanotic heart disease, what is the intensity or the severity of the lesion? That is the fifth point. That is how you approach. Okay, what is the severity? Now, how will you know, Anupa? Like suppose this baby is brought to you, and how will you know what is the severity of this lesion? What are the factors by which you will know whether this blue baby is having a severe lesion or not?
The degree of cyanosis is directly or more silent the murmur. It means the cyanotic heart disease is more severe, and is directly proportional to the degree of cyanosis. And more number of cyanotic spells means that it means that the brain has not adjusted to the cyanotic heart disease, and it means it is not critical, or it is not very severe. If it is a severe cyanotic heart disease, there will be lesser incidence of cyanotic spells.
Yeah. So first thing is presence of cyanosis. The more severe the cyanosis, the more severe will be the heart disease. But you should also note that it doesn't mean that a mild cyanosis is not a severe cyanosis, not a severe lesion. For example, a child may be having a TGA with a VSD. Okay, the child may be having, because of the shunt, because of the VSD, the child may not be having a severe cyanosis, but that doesn't mean that that's not a severe lesion. But the dictum is the more severe the cyanosis, the more severe will be the lesion. Then age of onset of cyanosis. The earlier the onset of cyanosis, the severe will be the lesion. And symptoms, the more symptomatic the child is, the more severe will be the lesion. Okay. So more the cyanosis, the more age of onset, the more symptomatic, then congestive heart failure. Okay. The dictum is if a blue child is in failure, that means that is a critical lesion. A blue child in failure, yeah, it is a critical lesion. And cardiomegaly, the presence of cardiomegaly. Okay, the dictum is larger the heart, the more severe will be the condition. Okay, larger the heart, the more severe will be the condition. And presence of pulmonary artery hypertension. Okay, pulmonary. If a blue baby has got pulmonary artery hypertension, that means the disease is severe. And how will you know? I forgot to mention that. Actually, you also forgot to mention that. How will you know whether the child has got a pulmonary artery hypertension or not? You will have to percuss the
pulmonary area. There will be.
You have to, that you forgot to mention. Okay. You forgot to mention. I think you forgot to mention. You have to percuss the pulmonary area, and dullness in the pulmonary area indicates that pulmonary artery hypertension. What is that called? What is that called? Gerard's dullness. Okay. It's called Gerard's dullness. Okay. So that is how you assess whether the child has got a. So that is how you come to heart disease, congenital or acquired, cyanotic or acyanotic. If cyanotic, what is the lesion and what is the severity? Now having come up to that, Anupa, what do you think would be this child be suffering from? If it is a tough physiology, what do you think would have been the initial surgery? Now coming back, what would have been the initial surgery? What was the need for that initial surgery?
It could have been a balloon valvotomy of the pulmonary valve.
Yeah.
Or it can be a Blalock-Taussig shunt, which could have been done.
Yeah. Do you think that for a simple pulmonary stenosis, we do a Blalock-Taussig shunt?
No.
So that means the child would have had a unfavorable coronary artery, isn't it? Unfavorable coronary anatomy, isn't it? Or a pulmonary atresia, a TOF with pulmonary atresia, isn't it? So that could be the reason why the lactosic shunt was done, because normally for a typical tetralogy of Fallot, will you do a nowadays will you do a corrective shunt surgery? No, isn't it? When the TOF with severe pulmonary atresia or children with hypoplastic, the hypoplastic pulmonary atresia, the annulus itself is very hypoplastic, you will go in for a palliative surgery, isn't it? Now, okay, how will you manage this child? This baby is fine.
We have to first we have to do
You have
the
to investigate the child, right? Okay.
Yes, we have to investigate. We have to
Yeah.
do a CBC.
What are the CBC? What are the changes that you will see in CBC?
Yeah, we'll see polycythemia can be there.
Yeah. Polycythemia can be there. Then hemoglobin. Yeah. Hemoglobin will be raised, or anemia can be there. Polycythemia can be there. Ferritin will be decreased. Then hyperuricemia is a possibility. Then you mentioned. Then what is the other investigation that you will do?
Then we have to do a chest X-ray.
Yeah. Chest X-ray in a blue baby is very, very important, isn't it? Now, how will you know from the chest X-ray in a blue baby? How will you come to a diagnosis? Suppose a blue baby with a normal heart, and reduced oligemic lung fields. What is the impression?
That means that there is a pulmonary stenosis.
It is a TOF physiology, isn't it? It is a TOF physiology. Suppose a large heart, so that's a normal heart with an oligemic lung fields. If it is a cardiomegaly with an oligemic lung fields, what are the possibilities? Cardiomegaly with an oligemic lung fields.
It can be TGA.
It can be oligemic lung fields. That means pulmonary oligemia. It can be a pure PS, isn't it? Pure PS with right ventricular failure, or it could be a cardiomegaly, so it could be an Epstein's anomaly. Or it could be a TOF physiology but associated with anemia, isn't it?
Infective endocarditis.
Anemia, infective endocarditis, or AR.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, or AR. Okay. Then, if suppose the child has got a cardiomegaly with an plethoric lung fields, what is the?
It can be a left-right shunt.
No, cardiomegaly. It's a blue baby, and we are just talking about blue baby. Blue baby with normal heart. We are just discussing the approach. Okay. Now, blue baby with normal heart with oligemic lung fields, you will think about TOF physiology. Blue baby with cardiomegaly with oligemic lung fields, you will think about pulmonary stenosis with right ventricular failure or an Epstein's anomaly, or a TOF with anemia, infective endocarditis, or myocarditis, or systemic hypertension, etc. Or cardiomegaly with big heart with an increased blood flow indicates transposition physiology, isn't it? Transposition physiology. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Now, what will you do for the child?
Now, we have to start the baby on medical. First, we have to do medical management.
Yeah, medical management.
So
Medical management and surgical management. Okay. Yeah. What is the medical management?
Medical management includes beta blockers.
Yeah, you can divide the medical management into prevention of complication, then prevention of anemia, isn't it? Prevention of anemia. You can say prevention of complication, prevention of anemia, and management of complication. Okay. Prevention of complication includes, like, how will you prevent complication? By giving, as you said initially, you will give propranolol, isn't it? Okay, that is to prevent TET spill. Okay, yeah. Then why do you want to give then prevention? Any other complication that you can prevent?
We can to prevent thrombosis or neurological complications. We can give a low dose
No, something you can prevent without giving drug. You can prevent by giving. You can improve the hydration status, prevent dehydration, isn't it? Yeah, prevent dehydration. Then prevent anemia by giving iron, isn't it? And management of complication. How will you manage complication? What is the medical management of complication?
Cyanotic spell can occur.
What do you mean by cyanotic spell, Anupa? What is cyanotic spell, and how do cyanotic spell occur? And what, Anupa, and just tell me, how will you, suppose a baby is having a spell, and how will you differentiate whether it is a cyanotic spell or the baby had a breath holding spell?
Yeah, in the cyanotic spell, it is due to a sudden infundibular spasm or a sudden increase in the right to left shunt, which as a result of which baby will become tachypnic, progressively cyanotic, and can result in loss of consciousness or seizures due to the progressive hypoxia. It occurs in infants usually after crying or waking up in the morning due to increased catecholamine release, which released. And in the cyanotic spell, when a cyanotic spell occurs, there will be decreased systemic vascular resistance, and systemic vascular resistance will be decreased. And increased catecholamine release.
Okay, very good, Anupa. You mentioned it very nicely. But one thing is, how will you differentiate between one baby is having a breath holding spell, another baby is having a cyanotic spell? What is one important history that you will ask the mother to know whether it was a breath holding spell or whether it was a cyanotic spell? What is the sequence of event in breath holding spell? Breath holding spell, the baby will be crying for something, frustration, anger, something. The baby will cry and the baby will suddenly stop respiration, isn't it? And okay, but whereas in case of whereas in case of cyanotic spell, what will happen? Early in the morning or after defecation or after some stress, there will be a sudden fall in saturation, and the baby, what will happen? There will be rapid
breathing, progressive cyanosis.
Rapid and sighing breathing, isn't it? Rapid and deep breathing. Okay, rapid and deep breathing, following which the child will have. Okay, so that is how you can differentiate between the thing. And Anupa, what you mentioned is absolutely right, but there is always a controversy regarding the infundibular spasm theory. Probably the Tandon sir, our great pediatric cardiologist, the father of pediatric cardiology, he mentioned, and most of them mentions about the infundibular spasm. But always there is controversy in everything, isn't it? Whether it is home or whether it is everywhere, there is controversy. So similarly, here also there is controversy which says that the anoxic spell or the TET spell, it's not due to infundibular spasm. Although I told you textbook says that it is due to infundibular spasm, because what they say is, tetralogy of Fallot with pulmonary atresia also will have TET spell. Okay, TOF with pulmonary atresia where there is no infundibulum. And they say that this infundibulum consists of this fibrous tissue, which is not actually sensitive to this catecholamine release or all these things. So that is why, and they say researchers have proved that tetralogy of Fallot with pulmonary atresia will also develop TET spell. So they say that although that cannot be ruled out, there is, as you said, you also mentioned about that, very good, that this TET spell is primarily, what they say is that it is due to a decrease in the systemic vascular resistance. Okay, decrease in the systemic vascular resistance. So as a result of which there will be, when the systemic vascular resistance increases, there will be increase in the right to left shunt, and as a result of which when there is a sudden event like defecation or crying, what will happen is that there will be a sudden decrease in the systemic vascular resistance, and as a result of which there will be increase in the right to left shunt will be there, and also what happens is that they what happens is that they right to left, and then what happens is that when there is a decrease in the PaO2, the PaO2 will be decreased and the PCO2 will increase and the pH also will be low, and the low pH, all this will stimulate the respiratory center and there will be hyperpnea. Okay, that is why there is a deep respiration. Okay, and there will be hyperpnea, and also the respiratory center also will be, and there will be acidosis and the respiratory center will be stimulated. Okay, so so the basic problem is a decrease, and also the what they say is that there is hypovolemia. Okay, hypovolemia and tachycardia. Hypovolemia and tachycardia also will aggravate the right to left shunting, and thereby right to left shunting, and thereby worsening of cyanosis. So now, how will you treat? So that is another medical management treatment of cyanotic spell. How will you treat? What is the most important thing?
We have
Most
to,
important,
as
the
a
important.
first aid, we have to keep the baby in the, if it is an infant, we have to keep the baby in the mother's lap in the knee chest position, or
Yes.
or if it is an older child, they will sit in sit in the squatting position, or in adolescent they will cross their legs. This is
Very good.
in a way to increase the systemic vascular resistance and decrease the venous return. Because the lower limb has more amount of deoxygenated blood.
Yeah.
This maneuver will increase the systemic vascular resistance and increase the blood flow through the pulmonary valve.
Very good. So that is number one. So so anoxaspell is due to decrease in systemic vascular resistance. So you are increasing the systemic vascular resistance by the knee chest position. What else will you do? So that is number one and the most important.
Then we have to we can give supplemental oxygen and give IV
okay. Next.
hemolysis and prevent
because hypovolemia will exacerbate. So you can give volume expansion. Then
we have to give a beta blocker can be given, like propranolol or esmolol, which is used in our institution, which will increase the systemic vascular resistance. It will abolish
and decrease the heart rate.
Decrease the heart rate and arrhythmia.
Okay.
And it will abolish the hypoxia, hyperventilation, apnea drive. It will abolish.
Yes.
And it will abolish the hypoxia-induced decreased systemic vascular resistance.
Okay.
And will increase the systemic vascular resistance.
Any other drug? Any other drug?
Then we can, to calm the child, we can give morphine, or morphine can be used for sedation. Then we can use phenylephrine,
which will again increase the systemic vascular resistance. Okay.
Then
soda bicarbonate be used.
Then if there is anemia, we have to give TRBC transfusion. And as a last resort, the baby may require emergency surgery.
Yeah. Okay. Now, okay, what is the surgical management?
Surgical management, palliative procedures are can be shunt surgeries, like bleloxetine, which is done between the subclavian artery and the pulmonary artery, or other shunts which are used done before, where the Waterhouse shunt between the ascending aorta and the pulmonary artery. A similar shunt can be done between the descending aorta and pulmonary artery as well. And definitive management is the intracardiac repair.
Yeah. So it can either be surgical treatment, can either be a palliative or it could be an ICR. That is an intracardiac repair, isn't it? And the palliative includes palliative surgery, as you said, all the shunt surgery. And palliative usually, if it is simple TOF, usually we go in for a definitive ICR itself. By it, we will not wait a long time, but maybe after 6 months or so, ICR is done. But if the child has got neonates with tetralogy of Fallot, with pulmonary atresia, or children with hypoplastic annulus, or children with unfavorable coronary artery anatomy, okay, and babies who have got very low weight, that is less than 2.5 kg, or babies who are small babies with medically unmanageable death spells. Okay, these are the conditions where you will go in for a palliative repair, isn't it? So when when this blue babies comes, you will investigate, you will do an CBC, ESR, and all these things, and then you will do an echocardiography. And if you find all these things, like either of all these things, but this baby did not have unmanageable text spell or not, maybe because of this anatomy, they would have done a particular shunt surgery. And when the baby is ready, then you will go in for a curative surgery. And what is that curative surgery? Intracardiac repair?
We close the VSD and the pulmonary stenosis is relieved, and the valve is pulmonary valve is reconstructed.
Yeah. What is the importance of doing a ICR early? ICR can be, intracardiac repair can be done early, so that it will improve the growth of pulmonary arteries, isn't it? Collaterals will be increased and it will improve, and also that will decrease the incidence of post-op ventricular arrhythmias and even sudden death in future. Okay, so that is why we do a early intracardiac repair, and which includes what? Intracardiac repair includes patch closure of the ventricular septal defect, then
And it is reconstructed.
Yeah, a reconstruction, or you can do a transannular patch. Transannular patch, like if the annulus is very, that means if the rim of the valve or if the annulus is very small, what you can do is you can put a vertical incision, or a transannular patch itself can be transannular patch surgery can be done, or you have to do if it is a valvotomy can be done, isn't it? And then how will you follow up these children?
These children are following the surgery. There is a chance of pulmonary regurgitation which
Yes.
can occur.
Yeah.
So, they have to be followed up at least 3 to 6 monthly interval.
These children, they have to be, it is not that everything is hale and hearty after surgery. These children has to be followed up by, as you said, 6 months or 6 months to 1 year. Every 3 to 6 months or 6 months to 1 year, these children have to be followed up, because there is chance for residual VSD, there is chance for residual pulmonary regurgitation. It's very, very common. Okay, so these children have to be followed up. And also, these children are likely to have arrhythmias, fatal arrhythmias, and surgically induced complete heart block. So these children may require a pacemaker in future. Okay, because these are all very surgical complication. And also, though it is not advised, practically it is advised that these children should get an IE prophylaxis after surgery. Okay, after surgery. So, so that is how this TOF is being managed. That is the medical aspect as well as the surgical aspect. Okay, now so we discussed that. So when we see a blue baby with we should always think that when the mother says a heart disease, you should always think whether the child has got a heart disease. If the child has got a heart disease, whether it is congenital or acquired. If it is congenital, whether it is acyanotic or cyanotic. If it is cyanotic, what is the type of lesion? Then what is the characteristic picture of tetralogy of Fallot, Anupa? How will you suspect tetralogy of Fallot in a child? What is pink fallow? Anupa?
When the pulmonary stenosis is not very severe.
Yeah, pulmonary stenosis is only mild, so as to, there is a pressure difference, but the pressure difference is not much enough to produce a significant right to left shunt. Okay, it's not that there is no gradient, there is a pressure difference, but it is not significant weaken so much as to produce a right to left shunt. Okay, so it will cause a but this pink fallow will, the murmur will be very, because the pulmonary stenosis is very less, the murmur will be very harsh. Okay, so that is pink fallow. And normal fallow cytology, the characteristic picture are that the child will have cyanosis depending upon the degree of stenosis. They will have cyanosis whether at birth or later. Then these children will have, as you mentioned, all these features will be there. And so that is pulmonary cyanotic heart disease, and severity is assessed by the degree of cyanosis. Okay, so thank you, Anupa. You had presented it very well. Very good discussion. I enjoyed the discussion with you, and thank you. Jaykumar sir, thank you so much for your student. Thank you. Thank